Story 1. For years into our relationship, everything seemed to be on track. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our shared dreams. But, as with any long-term commitment, we had our ups and downs. I guess we were in one of those downs when things started to unravel. Work stress was getting to him. Late nights at the office became more frequent, and our conversations, once filled with laughter and plans for the future, became brief check-ins. I felt the distance growing, but I didn't know how to bridge it. Instead of confronting the issue, I found my own ways to cope. Nights out with friends became more frequent, and those nights often involved more alcohol than I'd like to admit. It wasn't long before I was introduced to drugs, a temporary escape from the growing void in my life. During this time, I became close to a guy from our circle. He was my dealer. But over time, our interactions became less about the transactions and more about shared confidences. We'd talk for hours, and I found in him the emotional connection I was missing in my relationship. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were involved in an affair. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, which somehow made it feel even more betraying. Every time I came home late, avoiding eye contact, I felt the weight of my deceit. I knew I was living on borrowed time, that this secret would eventually come out, but the fear of confronting the truth, of admitting my mistakes, kept me trapped in this cycle. It's a story I never thought I'd be telling, especially not here, but here I am, laying it all out, hoping for understanding, if not forgiveness. The days turned into weeks, and the guilt was a constant companion. Every time I looked into his eyes, I felt like he could see right through me, even though he never said a word. Our interactions became mechanical, like two roommates sharing a space rather than two lovers sharing a life. My relationship with the other guy, let's call him Mark, grew more intense. We'd find excuses to meet up, sneaking around town, always looking over our shoulders. The thrill of the secret rendezvous was intoxicating, but the emotional toll was undeniable. Mark started pushing for more, wanting me to leave my partner and start a new life with him. The pressure was mounting, and I felt trapped between two worlds. My friends started noticing the change in me. I was distracted, always lost in thought, and my once vibrant personality seemed to have dimmed. Angie, my closest friend since college, confronted me one evening. We were at our favorite cafe, and she just blurted out, "I know about Mark." Turns out, she had seen us together one evening and had put two and two together. She was worried, not just about the affair, but about the path I was on with the drinking and drugs. Angie's intervention was a wake-up call. She reminded me of who I once was, of the dreams and aspirations I had before I got lost in this situation. We talked for hours that night, and I realized that I had to make a choice. Continuing down this path would only lead to more pain and heartbreak for everyone involved. I decided to end things with Mark. It wasn't easy. He was hurt, angry, and felt betrayed. But deep down, I knew it was the right thing to do. I needed to face the consequences of my actions. I also decided to seek therapy, both for the substance abuse and to understand the deeper issues that had led me astray. The next step was the hardest, coming clean to my partner. I chose a quiet evening, sat him down, and poured out everything. The pain in his eyes was something I'll never forget. He was devastated, not just by the physical betrayal, but by the emotional one. The man I had shared my life with for 4 years felt like a stranger to me in that moment. We cried, argued, and questioned everything about our relationship. The days that followed were some of the most challenging we had ever faced. We both took some time apart to reflect on everything. He went to stay with his brother for a week, while I remained at our shared apartment, grappling with the enormity of my actions and their repercussions. When he returned, we decided to attend couples therapy. It was a safe environment where we could communicate our feelings, fears, and hopes for the future. The therapist guided us through tough conversations, helping us understand each other's perspectives. We delved into the root causes of our issues, from my feelings of neglect to his struggles with communication. We made a conscious effort to rebuild our relationship. It wasn't easy. Trust, once broken, is challenging to restore, but we were both committed. We set boundaries, established open lines of communication, and prioritized spending quality time together. We rediscovered the things that had drawn us to each other in the first place and worked on creating new memories to overshadow the painful ones. In the end, our relationship emerged stronger than before. We realized that love wasn't just about the good times, but about weathering the storms together and coming out stronger on the other side. While I'll always regret the pain I caused, the experience was a turning point for both of us. It served as a stark reminder that relationships require constant effort, understanding, and mutual respect. We learn to cherish what we have and to never take each other for granted. Our story is a testament to the fact that while love can be tested in the most challenging ways, with effort, understanding, and commitment, it can endure and even thrive. Wow, what a story! Do you believe that true love can indeed withstand even the most challenging times? Drop a comment and let us know what you'd have done in her shoes. Now, as we move into our next tale, we will hear about another kind of betrayal, one that was hidden for years. Prepare to dive deep into the realm of concealed truths and their eventual revelations. Story 2. I, 33F, just found out my BF, 33M, cheated on me 6 years ago. We've been together 11 years. I don't want to bring this to my friends yet cause it would sour their relationship with him if we stayed together. Since we've been together so long, the majority of our friends are mutual. We've been together since we were 22. When he was 26, his mom died suddenly. They were extremely close and spoke every day. She was a real matriarch of their family, and it was incredibly hard on him. During the first year, I supported his grieving. I got him to go to grief counseling and helped him to get back into normal life afterwards. We stopped having regular sex because of the grieving, and also we moved back into my parents for 6 months to save some money, but did not ever go long periods without it. About 18 months after her death, we quit our jobs and went traveling together for an unknown extended period, which ended up being 10 months. It had always been a dream of mine to do this kind of trip. I was ecstatic that it was actually happening and that I got to do it with my best friend. He confessed to me. It turned out about 6 months in, after we'd been having arguments almost every day of the trip, that he'd totally hidden from me the depths of his depression and grief. He was suicidal, and he agreed to go on this trip to run away from his feelings, which, as we all know, does not work. I was livid. He'd ruined my life dream. It had been mostly a horrible experience up to that point, as he resisted any suggestions I made, and we fought every day about him not wanting to do stuff and leaving me to go out on my own, which I didn't want to do as I hadn't gone on this trip solo. He is an excellent liar and very good at appearing fine, which is why I hadn't spotted it before. In social outings and at home, he'd seemed to be dealing well with his grief. If he'd been honest with me, I would have insisted he get some help, go on antidepressants, and we delay the trip. I would have loved to have been given the choice. Anyway, fast forward to yesterday. In an emotional conversation about our future, he confessed he cheated on me during that trip. We started in Australia. We went to my cousin's wedding with my whole family. We spent 3 weeks in Australia with them, and then they left. We traveled around for a few weeks visiting friends, and then ended up back at my aunt and uncle's place for our final few weeks in Australia before moving on. This was less than 5 months into the 10-month trip. I suggested to my BF that he go to Bali by himself for 2 weeks while I stayed with my family. He'd never done any kind of travel like what we were about to embark on, where you move around a lot and there's a lot of unpredictability with when you will be. I knew he would struggle with this, so I sent him off to Bali to have an experience doing it solo. This was where he cheated on me. Less than a quarter of the way through our trip, I asked him for all the details, and it's so much worse than that. They were in the Gili Islands, which I went to with my BF 2 years earlier, and we'd had a great holiday. He told her he had a GF and they still did it. Neither of them were drunk or high. And also, they'd met in a hostel the previous night and deliberately booked a room with a double bed in another hotel for the next night, in order to have the opportunity. Oh, even worse, it had a pull-out bed and they'd booked it as a 3 with another guy and split it to make it cheaper, and they had sex outside on grass in the hotel grounds because the guy was in the room at the time. Oh, and even worse, she apparently sucked his dick again the morning after. So I immediately felt awful doesn't really compute here. He let her do that again in the morning. He said it was because he didn't feel connected to me and we hadn't had much sex recently. I will again remind you, he was grieving at the time a very serious death, and we'd been living at my parents' the last 6 months before leaving, which is not a sexy place. He didn't feel connected because he'd shut himself off and not told me how depressed he was getting and hidden with this lies and acting fine. I lived with him, and I didn't see anything concerning. I would not have gone on an extended trip with someone I felt needed support. I feel fully justified here in saying I had no part in why he felt that way. It was nothing I did or said or changed. I am beyond devastated by this news. I thought he would never cheat because he'd feel too guilty. Turned out he did cheat and felt guilty, but instead decided to just completely hide it from me. Oh, one more thing. The only other person he's told is our mutual friend, who he told the day after. and told him to either tell me immediately or never tell me, and who also I spent 3 weeks with. About 3 months later, on the USA part of our trip, I spent 3 weeks with the guy, and he's known this entire last 6 years of our friendship. I feel so yucky that one of my friends knew all that about my boyfriend and just hung out with me knowing that. I really thought I'd found an exception to what the general assumption seemed to be of men are cheating trash. So many of our arguments and his behavior make sense now, with him carrying around this guilt the whole time during the last 6 years. Has anyone forgiven cheating before? What about it made you forgive? I need to know if this is something I can move past. The pain of betrayal is a hard pill to swallow, especially when it's from someone you've shared over a decade of memories with. What do you think? Could you ever trust your partner again after finding out they cheated years ago? Drop your thoughts and experiences in the comments. That's the end of our episode for today. If you enjoyed these stories and want more, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and activate the notification bell. Stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.